I regret to inform you that Detroit, Buffalo, and Baltimore, and I mean, maybe even other teams that were in the playoffs, but definitely those three teams still really, really, really need another wide receiver. All three of those teams to me, and not to varying degrees. Sticking on Detroit here for a second, like for all of the consternation that people had over Dan Campbell's fourth down decision making and all the other rough breaks that the Lions got, like Josh Reynolds catches a couple of those balls, and like we're probably not having those conversations. We're going to get to see what Jameson Williams does to follow up his best career game, right? Because the Lions are going to be in the damn Super Bowl, and Josh Reynolds is a fine player, but he's a fine player. I think they could do better at their possession receiver spot than Josh Reynolds. Like, I think of all of these teams, they're probably the one that needs it the least because they still have Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I do think Jameson Williams can probably give him something, but although I don't think you can rely on him to be like your clear-cut number 2, just wide receiver at this point. I think you need another body there, like a big possession X receiver. And there's going to be a lot of those guys available in the draft this year. They need one. Baltimore absolutely needs one. Odell Beckham, they basically didn't outright bench in the playoffs, but they didn't play him very often. They certainly did not feature him at all. He's a free agent. Nelson Aguilar is a free agent. I don't think you can count on Rashad Bateman to be like one of your starters. Maybe he ends up being that guy, but I don't think you can just full on count on it. And same thing in Buffalo, like regardless of what happens with Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis is a free agent. Their playoff loss absolutely showed that they can't be throwing balls deep downfield to Trent Sherfield in the playoffs next year. Like I think they're ready for their next big swing at wide receiver in the Josh Allen era. Like they can keep Steph Diggs and that's fine, but they need to make like a trade up the draft board or something to try to get one of these A-tier receiver prospects or something like that, because they need another one. So these target distributions are already going to be tight on those teams. If these guys build the team the right way in the offseason, it should be even tighter.
Yeah, this is a great point. It didn't ultimately make my list, but I thought about this with the Ravens pretty hard. Like they have a dire need. I think for receiving talent, they're probably going to almost like a crazy percentage of the league's running backs are going to be available this offseason. So I'm confident that they're gonna find a backfield fix. It is much more difficult to address wide receiver in free agency because the biggest names who should technically be available probably going to get tagged. All of them seem likely to return to last year's teams, except for maybe Marquise Brown, who's probably not going to be a Raven next year, right? Like, exactly. there's not like an obvious free agent that seems likely to go to Baltimore. So they probably have to address it through the draft. We'll see how they do that. But I fully agree with you there.